Long now has mankind looked up to the skies and wondered if we are alone in this universe. Many miraculous things have been spotted all over the world, reported by our militaries, and sparked great debates amongst ourselves. I am here to tell you that, ladies and gentlemen, people of Earth, brothers and sisters of all races, all countries, that we are not alone. We have never been alone. That some higher power has seeked to spread the gift of life throughout the universe and beyond all comprehension. It is in these times we must learn to love one another. We must not share hate, but joy. We must not inhibit, but we must grow. These beings are our friends. They are our family. They want to help us become better, to see the true potential of mankind. And for maybe one day, we will join them in their voyage to help other beings from other star systems. As shocking as this news may be, it is nothing new. Our governments of the world have known for quite some time that we are not alone in this universe, and we have had contact for many years, slowly preparing the American public and the publics of the world for such a revelation. We are not alone, and we are about to embark on the greatest journey mankind has ever experienced. Ladies and gentlemen, we have contact.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. We are joined by Philip Mantle, one of a really good author that hopefully my book will be delivered soon from Amazon, so...
Yes, especially anytime he goes to order any books involving UFO subject lately, they mysteriously go missing in his part of the world.
Well, it's very true. They always go missing, but I've went for the Amazon Prime this time, so hopefully I'll get it. So, Philip, how are you today?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Yeah, I'm fine, thank you very much. All is well here in sunny Pontefract in West Yorkshire.
Yeah. So, Philip, can you tell us a little bit about yourself for the audience tonight?
Yeah, well, I've been involved in the UFO topic for, and this makes me sound really old, but I've got it, over 40 years. But going back, I was always interested in all things paranormal, as far back as I can remember, those were, of course, long before the days of the internet and smartphones and things like that. But I used to read whatever I could lay my hands on. My mother was a great reader. She liked, fiction. So we always had books around. And I remember, I don't know, I would be 13 or 14. And my best friend's grandmother quite literally lived at the opposite side of the road to us. And she used to go to the spiritualist church. So I went along with her a few times. I didn't know what to expect, but I found it fascinating. Didn't necessarily agree with everything that was being said, but I believe these people were genuine in their beliefs and so on. And I remember reading Eric von Daniken's book, Chariots of the Gods. That made me think.
Yeah, it's brilliant,
And so when I left high school when I was 16 with no academic qualifications that were worth anything, not really knowing what I wanted to do in life. So I kind of went from one job to another, but still had this fascination for the paranormal. And I also loved astronomy and the space program. And I read one astronomy book, no idea what it was called, but it had one chapter on UFOs.
Yeah.
Basically dismissing them.
Yeah.
But yet elsewhere in this same book, there were, things of an astronomy nature that were theoretical and were far out and outlandish. And I thought, well, why would you dismiss the UFO topic but accept these other things?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so that kind of got me interested. And in very late 1978, over into 1979, I went to work in what was West Germany and couldn't speak a word of the lingo. So I asked my mum to send me some books. And this box arrived, and it was all UFO books, all paperbacks. To this day, I have no idea where she got them. So by the time I returned home, I got a better grip on the subject, if you like, through these books. And just by chance, I used to live about 5 miles from the city of Leeds in West Yorkshire. Yeah. And Leeds then, as of now, used to publish a newspaper, an evening newspaper called the Yorkshire Evening Post. And my aunt, who lived around the corner, she brought it around one night. She knew of my growing interest in this subject. And she showed me an advertisement. And it was a small ad for the formation of the Yorkshire UFO Society coming up that Sunday in Leeds. So, as people of my age will know that in those days on a Sunday, I mean, the whole of the UK used to shut. There were no shop. You know, you got one bus an hour. Anyway, so I went into Leeds, found this location, and there was about 20 or 30 people there. The Yorkshire UFO Society was founded by two brothers. They were Graham and Mark Birdsall. They put on a presentation, which I thought was excellent. There was even more books that I could buy while I was there. And that was me up and running, gentlemen. I paid my membership to the Yorkshire UFO Society. It was about the grand total of about £2 for the whole year.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
And £2. You can't buy a pint or a coffee for £2.
I know.
Right?
It's how you tell me about in those days on a Sunday how everything locks down. I mean, I stay in a small mining village, and my mother's father, they're from the 60s period, and they told me on a Sunday everything closed. The pubs, everything. Yeah.
Everything. I mean, it was totally shut down. There were a few pubs would stay open for a couple of hours. That was it, you know. And the buses used to run a limited service. And but it was, for me, it was amazing. I've often looked back and I've thought I landed at the right place at the right time with the right people. Graham, and of course, went on many years later to be the publisher and editor of the newsstand magazine, UFO magazine, which sold in very large quantities, you know, not just in the UK, but in many different parts of the world. Sadly, you know, he passed away, but, you know, I was up and running, and it was great. And that's how it all began for me, gentlemen.
Wow. That is absolutely amazing. That is absolutely amazing. But can I ask you something? What have you found through the years working in the UFO field? What have you found?
What have I
with
found?
UFOs? Yes. What interesting subjects?
I set off, you know, when I landed at the Yorkshire UFO Society, I knew virtually nothing apart from what I'd read in these books. I was an absolute 100% believer that UFOs were aliens from another world. Yeah. What I have learned in the 40 plus years that I've been involved is that it's not as simple as that. Yeah. It's not as black and white as are they ours or someone else's? Yeah. Or are they something else? Is it the UFO phenomenon, which is singular, or the UFO phenomena, which is plural? And that's, I think it's the latter of those two now, but I used to think the opposite way. And what I've found, guys, is that whenever you think I'm on a path here, this is the answers are here. Just as you get in that mode, something will crop up, or a case, or an incident, or you'll read something else that will just give you a kick up the backside, and you think, right, sorry, I thought I was onto something there, but I'm actually not. And so I didn't have a list, but I kind of had a list of things I wanted answering. Not a definitive list.
Yeah.
And some of those questions have been answered down the decades, but there's still some that I haven't quite got around to yet, or I haven't found the answers. Because I always said, if I find the answers, that's me done.
That's very true. I mean, it's where do you go in the UFO field? I mean, are the aliens from outer space, or is it secret technology that the government is working on? I mean, it's mind-boggling the way some things go.
There's a whole list of possibilities or theories, and it's not just one or two. And there's arguments for and against all of these. The most popular, of course, the most romantic is they're aliens from another world.
Yes.
But what's happened down the decades as well is that, mankind's scientific knowledge has also expanded. And we know far more about the universe and our place in it now than we did, 40 years ago. For example, the observable universe is an estimated 48 billion light years across.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Just try and get your head around that. It's got an estimated 2 trillion galaxies. And within those galaxies are countless stars and planets. So when you talk about the likelihood of life existing, it has expanded exponentially. Yeah. But the distances from us to anything else has also got bigger. So, it's a kind of giving in one hand and taking away in the other.
I believe that 100%. I believe that there could be races out there. I believe that there's races out there that right now, but it's the distance to travel.
It's the distance and the time as well, because mankind's only been in existence. Whether you believe in evolution or creation, we haven't been around for long. We've only been sending radio signals out into space for 150 years.
Yeah.
So the chances of how would they? Let's say, guys, you guys tomorrow you invent warp drive like Star Trek. You can go anywhere in the universe, and your sole purpose is to look for other life forms. Where would you go?
Ooh.
It is so big. Where would you go? The chances are, you would be going for centuries and never find a thing. Or you could be extremely lucky, and hit the bullseye. But that's how big the operative word in all that was the observable universe.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Our knowledge is expanding all the time, of course.
Yeah.
And so we could kind of reverse that. Let's assume there are intelligent life forms elsewhere in the universe. How would they detect us?
Well, that's very true, because we've only been really pumping out transmissions for so long.
Yeah, and of course,
the off chances if they were flying past the Earth, but then again, you come into the size of the universe.
Yeah, and of course, what we call radio transmissions, analog, will be gone. In not too distant future, it will be gone. It will all be digital, so we'll not be sending any messages of any kind into space. There'll be no way of detecting radio or TV signals because it will all be digital.
I suppose in a way, if there was a star race out there, a race in their ship flying along, and they came across maybe Voyager, an old satellite, right? They came across Voyager 1, and they thought, somebody's made this, right? So maybe if they could track it, but as you say, it's the size and it's time.
Exactly.
By the time that gets outside of our
the Voyager spacecraft is the only man-made thing to leave the solar system.
Yes,
exactly.
Our solar system. Yeah. And of course, it was used in the movie Star Trek.
That's
the first Star Trek movie, Vija.
That's Vija.
But we also have to. We have to try and think differently. We can only think as humans.
Yes.
For whatever reason, mankind has always wanted to know more. We wanted to get down from the trees, come out of the cave, see what was over that next hill, what was over that ocean, what's on that planet. Yes. There may be intelligent species out there that are quite happy exactly where they and they couldn't give a monkeys.
that is you know. Yeah, there might be beings out there so technologically advanced, might know of us, but they just don't want anything to do with us.
They won't even know about us. They're quite happy. They've evolved totally alien to us. You know, they perhaps don't have disease like we do. Maybe they're not warring tribes like we are. They're quite happy, you know, and we don't have to go anywhere else. We've got everything else we need here. You know, they don't. So I've often said, let's just think about this. The next most intelligent species on Earth are the dolphins.
Yes.
Yep.
Now, we can teach them to jump up in the air and catch a fish.
Yeah.
But can you say to the dolphin, you know, Flipper, how are you going today? How are you feeling? You had a nice day? How's the wife? You know, we cannot communicate with them whatsoever. And they are an intelligent species. They think they are self-aware. I think, therefore I am.
Yeah. So
they're self-aware, but we have no idea when they're looking back at us what their thoughts are.
Yes.
They're thinking, you know, who's this idiot? I'll jump out and the damn fool's going to give me a fish, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, we could be the intergalactic dolphins. You know, there may be a species out there that is communicating with us, but we're
just ignoring it.
We're just too dumb to recognise it. You know, we're just not capable.
It's sad to think that there might be races out there trying to communicate us right now, but we're that stupid we just cannot.
Well, think about this. You know, if you took your computer screen now and put it in an ant colony, the ants would know it's there. They would crawl all over it. You know, they might attack it. The work, but they would never ever in a zillion years be able to figure out what it was, where it came from. What its use was. It could even be playing. You could be talking to them on it, you know, and they wouldn't have a clue. But yet they're highly organised in their own little world, you know.
It's fascinating. It truly is fascinating.
So when people talk about aliens coming to the and they may well be right. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying it's not as simple and as straightforward as some people would imagine.
Yes.
You know, they claim, for example, we detonated the first atomic bomb in 1945. 2 years later, you had the UFO crash at Roswell. The aliens saw the atomic bomb. Well, how did they see it? You know, how did you see it? They would have to be facing the direction of the atomic blast in the first place. You know,
unless they were here already watching us.
Well,
right. Unless they were here already watching us and just thinking, what these ants up to, right? Say we're the ants. What are these ants up to? And boom, they're like, oh, they found the nuclear bomb. They figured it out.
But if they'd been watching us, they would have known it was coming anyway.
That is very true. That's very true. I mean,
so it's not as black and white as when I first joined the subject that UFOs were either complete bunkum or they were aliens, because that was it. You know, it's not as straightforward as that, and there are all kinds of, you know, other subjects mixed in with UFOs. That's why I call it phenomena, plural.
Yes,
we could be dealing with a whole host of different things that we've got all mixed up into one.
Yes, I do think there's a lot. I do think that the governments of the world do have a lot of technology, and I do think a lot of the technology is. They think it's UFOs, but it's no UFOs. I mean, just look at the stealth bomber or the U-2 spy plane. They were all thought to be UFOs.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They're just secret spy technology.
Well, it's the same with the paranormal subject. That, I mean, you know, there's a whole host of, again, phenomena. Yes. And people used to think, oh, you know, a psychic experience equals, oh, I've seen a ghost. It must be a dead person. Well, it's not for me, it's not as straightforward as that. It could well be, but there are many other ways of looking at it.
It could be the stone tape theory where, like,
absolutely,
it records maybe, or it might be a slip in time. You know, it might be like a slip in the time where you're seeing something, you think that person's dead because you're, let's say, you're in the 1990s or the right? And you see like a Victorian woman walking through them. That may just be some weird
That'd
thing
be my wife.
It's some weird thing that's happened that's maybe opened a doorway in time. You don't know. So this is the thing. It could be a spirit, but then again, it could just be a slip in time.
Yeah, and we must, keep all this in mind. But at the end of the day, be it the paranormal or be it UFOs, there is something that is intangible that at the moment always seems to be just out of our grasp. But nonetheless, it is worthy of our time and our study.
Yes.
I call it, rocks from the sky. It's only, it's not that long ago. I think it was in the late 18th century. Oh, no, the 19th, 1800s, that astronomers of the day said, it's impossible for rocks to fall from the sky.
Yes.
But then there was a shower of meteorites, I believe, in France, which was undeniable in the end. They had to admit, because if you look in the sky, it's obvious there's no rocks there. It's clouds, but there's no rocks. But of course, we now know these as meteorites.
Yes, I mean, there was a time on the Earth when people thought that the Earth was flat. But mind you, you still get that. I would also argue that the ancient Greeks, knew that the world was not flat. They measured it. So but so I think when it comes to UFOs today, we know that there is a core phenomenon there, but it's a rock from the sky, but we haven't quite figured it out what it is and what it comes from and how it appears and its nature, its origin, etc., etc. It's like, I mean, lately the US government's been releasing a lot of stuff, right? But the fighter jets tracking over the Pacific? They were tracking this thing. They just could not keep up with it. Now, one side of him is like, that could be aliens, but then again, as it could just be another country with a secret technology.
Absolutely. What is intriguing though is that the US Navy that we're talking about released 3 videos.
Yes.
They've all got the nickname the Tic Tac, but only one of them was the Tic Tac, and that was over the sea. Now these were all filmed by military fighter jets, US military fighter jets. These fighter jets cost $100 million plus each. But yet when they film these things, what do you get? You get a fuzzy blob.
Right.
Which is perfectly true with their fuzzy blobs. But yet you see in different theatres of conflict around the world where they have smart bombs, laser-guided missiles and so on, you can see the building they're aiming at, the people standing outside, the traffic going past, and then boom, pretty clearly. But yet, when it came to these 3 videos that have been released, they're fuzzy blobs. Now,
it was a fuzzy blob.
Can you imagine? I mean, the US Navy were on a training exercise while doing it. They were playing war games. But imagine it's not war. We've got the Russians massing on the Ukrainian border as we speak.
Yeah.
So you can imagine one of these planes going into combat and saying, "I've got a fuzzy blob on my screen. Do I blow it up?" Is it the Russians or is it not? Surely, if it was a Russian fighter jet, they would be able to recognise it. They wouldn't just get a fuzzy blob on the screen.
See, this is the problem. See, this is the problem. I know exactly what you're talking about. You watch it like Afghanistan or Iraq in the early years of the wars, and that was a few years ago, 15 years ago, and you could see the wee people moving about. You could totally make them out, right? You could totally make them out. But there was this jet worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and it was a blob.
Yeah.
Right? They could not catch it.
And not only that, when you hear the Navy pilots talking over this, they say there's a whole fleet of them. But where are they? Where is this whole fleet? Because nobody's ever seen it.
It makes you wonder if it's just like a disinformation type of thing to try and put it out there for people.
All I'm saying, guys, there's no doubt that the release of all this information has lifted ufology out of the doldrums. It's put it into the mainstream. It's taken seriously. No problem with that. However, we just have to remind ourselves that these jets film fuzzy blobs. And yes, we have all the background story that goes with it, and it was captured on radar on the naval vessels and so on. But none of that is new. And if you go back to 1990 in Belgium, they captured it on board radar on F-16s. Mm-hmm. We think, oh, little Belgium, they're still flying soft with camels. No, they're not. They're part of NATO. And whatever the Americans have, we have. But they did something different. They released it pretty much straight away. There was no film. It was just the radar, the onboard radar. So there is a precedent for this type of thing. Plus, we can go back down the years. It might not be film, but we have, testimony from military sources about things on radar and so on.
Mm-hmm.
I do think there is a lot of disinformation. I do think that, the CIA and people like that, they have been notorious for putting out disinformation about UFOs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, when you got the spy plane in flight, the CIA put out false UFO reports to cover up the fact that it was the spy plane going over. Yeah. But here's an interesting little thing for you. Going back some decades, I spoke to a gentleman by the name of Wing Commander Alan Turner, MBE, retired from the Royal Air Force. His security clearance was so high that when the spy plane came into the UK to refuel, he was informed about it. I met the wing commander in person, and he said, I forget the date, but I think it was back in the 60s, over mainland UK, sort of over the sort of Wiltshire, Somerset, that kind of area, he tracked 6 unknown targets, and as did other air stations at the time, and even Heathrow. He reported it immediately to the Ministry of Defence, who said, we want a full report. Bearing in mind, we're at the spy plane, he would have been informed. And he says, Philip, I could give you a list of what these things were not, but I cannot tell you what they were. There were 6 targets. He had 6. And they didn't go in linear speed. They weren't going that fast, but he said their rate of climb, because they had 2 radars, one was the height finding radar, so they could track the rate of climb. Mm-hmm. And he said it was astounding. And we only got to find out about the wing commander quite by accident. A friend of mine was in a pub and with his son-in-law chatting away about UFOs at the bar, and the wing commander just happened to be sat at a table next to him and overheard them. And we even had him come up and speak at one of our conferences. But what is fascinating, I said, so you're telling me, Mr. Turner, that, you reported this to the Ministry of Defence. He said, I was ordered immediately to write a report about it. But when you go into the UFO files at the National Archives, there's no sign of it. You cannot, nothing. And it could be, one of those things. It's gone astray. Paperwork does that. But, It's can you imagine the things that has been covered up over the years under the government? Well, again, we have to remember that not just our government, but governments in general, part of their job is to keep secrets. Oh, yes. And sometimes the secret is not the information, it's how it's been obtained. Yeah. The information in it might be quite worthless, but how it's obtained is worth protecting. So I'll give you an example. Our forces are covered by the Official Secrets Act. Yes. A friend of mine used to work in a textile mill, making cloth. And he said to me, well, I've signed the Official Secrets Act, Philip. Yeah. I said, bugger off. You make cloth. I thought he's pulling my leg. He says, no. He says, some of the cloth that we make is used for military dress uniforms. So I have to sign the Official Secrets Act. Yes. I said, well, is that cloth any different? No, it's exactly the same. So, the Official Secrets Act in the UK is well out of date, and it covers all kinds of things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So things may be covered up simply because that's the way we do things.
Yeah.
You know, and you say, well, why? You say, well, because we always have. Yeah. You know, there ain't no reason why. We don't question it. We just do.
Yeah.
So, you know, so sometimes it's not as straightforward and as obvious as we would think it was.
Yeah. Would you like to?
Now, it's certainly interesting to hear all your stories about how the field itself has progressed. As a whole, what are your thoughts on it becoming more open discussed? Because obviously, instead of, you know, there's not as much secrecy behind the matter that, yes, there is something in fact going on, but at the same time, would you agree that it potentially causes a risk allowing it to be discussed more simply because people get mixed up so much too easily?
Yeah, I mean, when we look at the Pentagon papers that came out last year, you know, the 9-page briefing document about what their plans are, they're setting up their task force to look into this subject. But their starting date is 2004. They're not going to deal with anything before that. And they're only going to deal with military sources. There's some suggestion they might, you know, bring in civilian aircraft and things like that. But I can understand that because, you know, they are talking about these things being observed, what they call multiple platforms. So it could be onboard radar, you know, ground-based radar, film, photographs, etc., etc. Not just some guy out walking his dog tonight who sees something bizarre. You know, so I can understand that, and I can understand them having a starting line, because no matter where you put the starting line, you will be criticised. You know, so they're starting with things in 2004 because of the Navy videos. That's when one of them was taken. So again, I can understand that. But two things. People forget when all this came out, they said we cannot rule out it being the Russians or the Chinese.
Yes. So
is that a sort of indirect way of saying we need more for our defense budget, which in the States is already in the trillions of dollars?
Yeah.
You know,
I think they spend the most. The United States not spend the most in defense.
The U.S. has the highest in defense spending of multiple countries.
So that could be a kind of different way of saying we need more money. We don't know what these things are. Look at them. Our jets can't even catch them. Yeah. You know,
and the cameras are showing blobs.
Yeah, just think about it. If these are Chinese or Russian, we're in trouble. So we need. I don't know what you'd need the money for, but you know, you don't always have to. You can always make room for more money in the defense budget, surely. Yeah. But you know, these videos got out there, so it's pretty pointless saying, "Oh, we don't know anything about them. We're not interested." Blah 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 blah, because we know that's not true. So. You know, I don't like the Belgians when they released the film of the onboard radar. It didn't do them any harm. There was no mass panic. You know, the stock market in Belgium didn't crumble. You know, they didn't burn the churches and kill the politicians. It gave an air of, well, that's fascinating.
I have noticed that the rhetoric with the UFO. I mean, and maybe go back a couple of years, right? UFO. If you talked about UFOs, especially on the news, they would all take the piss for it. They would laugh. They would make a fool of it. See now, it's as if the programming the UFOs is getting more and more.
Well, it's been taken more seriously, but again, you have to look back. The interest or the coverage of UFOs has gone up and down the decades. For example, in the sort of early to mid 90s, again, it was treated very seriously, simply because you got people like Dr. John Mack, a Harvard professor, coming out, you know, of the shadows and saying, you know, these alien abductions, there's something to this, and it shouldn't be dismissed. He was a Harvard professor, Pulitzer Prize winning author. You know,
Yeah.
so again, that gave the subject a degree of seriousness. So we're in the same position now, perhaps heightened, but so how long it will last remains to be seen. For me, long may it last. But you also have to look back. To begin with, we used to use the term flying saucers.
Yes.
The U.S. military invented the phrase UFO to give it a degree of credibility.
Mm-hmm.
Now they've changed that to UAP again to give it an air of credibility. Yes. So we'll see. But UAP is nothing new. It's been used on and off for some time now. But now all you hear is the phrase UAP. So they're trying to give it a bigger air of credibility. And we'll see where it leads. They've made certain promises. And, of course, these are promises by politicians who ultimately are accountable to their voters.
Yes, I mean, I found it quite interesting how the Pentagon has started releasing quite a lot of stuff.
We'll see, won't we? We'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, again, we'll see. That if it's to believe they do have more, let's hope it's better clarity than these fuzzy blobs.
Right.
And we shall see. We'll see what happens.
Maybe they're just wanting their jets upgraded. You don't know. They might want better cameras in their jets.
Well, it's all part of the defence budget, like we said. These are Russians. And you've got the Russians, like we said, massing their military forces on the Ukrainian border. Whether anything happens remains to be seen. They've done it in the past of the Russians and nothing happened. If you go back to 1980, when the Solidarity movement was rising in Poland, they did the same there. The troops were massing on the Polish border. But thankfully there was no military conflict. So again, that's something that will, we'll see. We'll see.
I think a lot of it too is to do with a lot of mind games, especially with Russia.
Well,
mind games.
We've had attacks here in the UK, like we had the Salisbury poisonings and the gentleman before that died. So the Russian bear likes to flex its muscles in one way or another from time to time. And if we go back to our own Ministry of Defence here in the UK, they've been consistent in their correspondence about the UFO subject down the decades. And they were quite openly have always admitted that, look, there are things that are reported to us that we don't know what they are, but we don't necessarily make any investigations into them. All we are interested in is from a defence point of view. And what that means was, if it's not us, is it the Russians? And if it's not the Russians, we're not interested. And a lot of people don't believe that, but they have said that consistently for decades.
Oh, yeah.
You would think that they would want to protect against an alien race. I mean, hypothetically, let's say that these things, these blobs that the jets were chasing, right, they've got nothing to do with Earth. They've got nothing to do with any of the technological advancements in Earth. Nobody in Earth. Say it as aliens. You would think they would want to protect the civilians, the public.
Yeah, but have they ever been hostile?
That's the thing that I don't think they have they?
Now we had a department at the Ministry of Defence called in the intelligence services called DI-55, and on occasion, maybe 5 or 6 times a year, it would look into certain UFO reports. Usually, if they came from what they call a credible source, that was pilots, police officers, people of that nature. Not always, but mostly. And they still say that now, although they say, the UFO desk is gone. But if need be, we will still look at such incidents from a credible source. And that means pilots and so on. But they've got no intention of getting into the UFO hunting business, as so far as we know. And they've been, in a lot of ways, I believe them. Because what we have to remember is we don't actually investigate UFOs. We investigate reported sightings of UFOs. I can't. You two might be the two richest men in the world now, and you're the top scientists. And I can't give you a piece of a flying saucer or a UFO.
Yeah.
They go take it to the top laboratory in the world and figure out what that is. I can't do that. I can give you, like the Wing Commander, I can give you his testimony, and backed by his military knowledge. But there's nothing. It's gone.
Yeah,
it's over and done. Like in the paranormal world, I saw the Victorian lady walk through my living room. You don't have any tangible evidence of that. You have witness testimony, which, as we know, in a lot of instances, can be flawed as well.
Yeah.
So,
it could be. It could. As I say, it could be. It might not be a spirit you're seeing. It might just be something different.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I've witnessed psychic phenomena, and I even had my own near-death experience.
Yeah.
But I didn't die though. I didn't die. I'll tell you. I've got I've had a long illness with heart disease.
Yeah.
So I've had a heart attack. I suffer from heart failure, and I have a pacemaker with a defibrillator in it. Now, in 2016, I was cooking some dinner here at home, and I had an attack of what's called cardiac arrhythmia. In other words, your heart goes really fast. Mm-hmm. And it was almost, I'm in the kitchen on my own. It's almost like, it was almost like a, soap opera heart attack. I clutched my chest. I put one hand on the side to try and hold myself up. My legs buckled. Yes. And just as I was about to hit the floor, my defib fired.
Right.
Bang! Like a kick from a mule.
Yes.
But at the same time, I'm watching all this from the other end. We have a big, long galley kitchen. I'm watching this completely dispassionate, no feelings, no emotion from the other end of the kitchen, and I'm looking down on it, and I can see it happening. And I'm totally detached from it. My heart never stopped because in your pacemaker, you also have a recorder. So when I ended up in the hospital, they downloaded the information. I never lost consciousness. When the defib fired, I staggered forward and shouted at my wife and entered the living room. And she called, the ambulance. But I can picture it now. And it was me.
Yeah.
But I never died. As for psychic phenomena, I'll tell you the story. This is my ex-wife. We went to London. I won't say which newspaper, but we went to one of the offices of one of the main daily newspapers here in the UK to discuss me writing a feature for them. Huge, great office building, in London.
Yeah.
I knew this guy's name, but I didn't know anything about him. We went in, went through security, got our badge, sat down. This lady came down. She took us up to his office. This was his secretary. Made us a cup of coffee, and he walked in. Nice. And he said, "Oh, nice to meet you, me and my wife." And he said, "Have you had lunch?" I said, "No, we literally just arrived. Come on, we'll go up to the executive dining room." So we goes upstairs. So he sat there. He was the assistant editor, and there was the picture editor, the features editor, and some other chap. And we're eating away, chatting about what pictures we can use and what we're going to write about. And my wife was surprisingly quiet. It wasn't like her. And she said to this fella, he's the assistant editor. He sat next to her, actually. She's in between us. And she says, "Do you know somebody called Josh?" And he started sputtering and, and we finished our lunch, we went back down to his office, and he wasn't happy. He said, "Who have you been talking about? Me? Who's been telling you things?" I said, "Nobody. We literally arrived 5 minutes before you opened the door." And he started crying. And apparently Josh was a girlfriend he'd had when he was a teenager. He was now in his 50s. And that even wasn't her name. That was his nickname for her. Her name, whatever it was, wasn't even close to Josh. And he said to my wife, how did you know that? She said, "I just saw the word Josh in big letters right across your forehead. Josh. Like straight across your forehead there. And I just had to say something.
That's fascinating.
And it worked because I got the job. I wrote a feature and got paid for it. And I've kept in touch with him ever since.
That's
now
what
that was, I don't know. I witnessed that myself. I'm not biased because it was my wife. This gentleman, he was a high flyer in the newspaper industry. That's why I've not mentioned his name.
Yeah.
But it is perfectly true. He's retired now anyway.
Yeah.
But make of it what you will, gentlemen.
I believe you 100% because that's really, and that's so interesting because we do a lot of paranormal stuff too. We do a lot of stuff about spirits and stuff too, and I find that really
I said to a friend of mine, look, I told him about my near-death experience. He said, well, you must have died. I said, but I didn't. My heart didn't stop. I didn't lose consciousness. Well, you must have done. Because he believes in the spirit world. Yeah, he believes in the spirit world and the afterlife and heaven and all that lot. I'm not saying I don't believe. I don't really. But
it makes you wonder what would have happened if your pacemaker hadn't triggered.
I'd be dead.
You see.
As simple as that.
Yeah.
Had the pacemaker tried to reset the rhythm of my heart, which failed. It couldn't do it. So then what your defib does is zap it to put it back to its natural rhythm, which it did. So by the time the paramedic got here, my pulse and my heart rate were all back to normal. I was a bit out of it, but my observations, as they call them, that they do in the hospital, they were all back to normal. And I spent, a good week, 10 days in hospital. I didn't tell anybody at the hospital there because what was the point, But I told my wife and she just shook her head, What kind of a weird bugger am I living with?
That's the thing. I mean, I find that fascinating. That story.
So I had a near-death experience, but I didn't actually die. Make of it what you will.
But maybe you did for a split millisecond.
Look, you're getting like my friend now. You're getting like my friend now. But maybe I did. Maybe I did. I don't know.
I never know anymore.
So Dakota, we've got about 7 minutes or something left of the show. Would you like to ask any questions before we tail up?
Well, I don't know. There's so many, like you said before in this interview, there's so many facets to this type of thing. Someone with your experience, Philip, if an individual wanted to start going into research into this topic, maybe they've had their own experiences, what would be your recommendations to them?
Well, the old saying from Fox Mulder, trust no one. You enter into this subject usually for your own self-interest. Make up your own mind. Don't necessarily pin your hat on any one theory. Try and keep your mind open. Don't wince if somebody offers some constructive criticism because it's always welcome. There's nothing wrong with being skeptical.
Yes.
A debunker is something entirely different. If you have a debunker, then don't take any notice of them because they say it cannot be, therefore it isn't. Well, so there's nothing wrong with a heavy dose of skepticism at times. But at the end of the day, there is a core phenomena there, be it the UFO or paranormal field, that you can, if you want to, get your teeth into it. My dad was a coal miner. He worked down the mine all his life. I left school with no qualifications. And it's my own, I don't know what you want to call it, enthusiasm, for want of a better word, that got me involved in this subject. And it has taken me around the world. I don't mean physically. I have colleagues. I've been on television. I mean, I don't know any of my pals at school that would have been on television. When we left school, we were either primed to go down the mine, work in the factory or the mill. I worked in a factory for a long time, and I'm proud to say that. But nothing much was thought of us. Let's put it that way. But this getting involved in this subject has broadened my outlook and my mind no end. Don't sit and watch a soap opera. You know, irrespective of what field you are interested in, if you are keen on photography or field work or investigations, etc., there's something there for everyone. If you just want to have a passing interest in it, you can go to the conferences, watch fantastic podcasts like this one or others around the world. There's a multitude of books. I would recommend Flying Dispress, of course, my own little outfit for UFO books.
Yeah.
But there's something there for everybody, irrespective of what level of interest you want to get involved in. And it is I don't care what anybody says. Somebody said, "Oh, you're wasting your time." I said, "Well, it's my time to waste, isn't it? You know, I'm not sat in front of the TV eating TV dinners. You know, I've got something that occupies my mind the biggest part of the day. That and my wife." Turn that laptop off. How much longer are you going to be, you know? And it is the same in the paranormal field. It is a fascinating area to be involved in, and there's something there for everybody.
It's kind of like it's like you say, like humans, like they like to explore. Well, this is what it's doing for me. I'm doing what I want to do. I'm exploring the new. I'm getting to meet people like you, Philip. But UFOs, I'm getting to do ghost stuff, spirit stuff. This is what I love doing, and it's the same for Bald and Dakota here, you know.
Yeah,
and
I've met people from all walks of life. Yeah. You know, from your housewife who's seen this thing land in the field next to where she lives, to the doctors and professors and wing commanders and everybody in between.
Yeah,
and I treat them all just as equal. They're just the same as you as me. But the one thing that they have in common is that this thread of UFOs, either as a witness or as a researcher or an investigator or an author, and I've got involved in some fascinating stuff, gentlemen. I really have, and still am. Yeah. It's still ongoing. You know, the thirst for more knowledge and more involvement, hasn't gone away.
Yeah. Well, it will not really go away until you find proof. I mean, until you find if aliens are actually visiting Earth,
or something else,
or something else, or whatever it could be, or what it could be. It might not be an alien. It might be something else, as you say.
Yeah, it could be a Scotsman.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they get everywhere.
Yeah, we're everywhere. It's all right. We're awfully good at inventing stuff. So,
listen, my mate in Scotland often reminds me that it was a Scotsman that invented television.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I said he wasn't clever enough to copyright it, though, was he?
But there you go. I would like to thank you, Philip, for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Really good. And ladies and gentlemen, please go and buy all your books. Every one of them.
Links will be in the description. Check it out. It's definitely a fascinating discussion.
I'm going to be getting them. I'm going to get every one of them.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been a great pleasure speaking to you this evening. And if you're ever in sunny Pontefract, you know where I am.
Yes, we will indeed. So, Dakota, will we play the outro?
Yeah, yes, about time we should play that. You can get this going here. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Stay safe, everyone. See you next time.
Bye, guys.